First, not the parent first. Lauren Lake, great to have you on the program. Thank you so much. Please come back. That does it for us tonight. Banfield starts now.
Got some breaking news that's happening right now. Reports of at least 6, even up to 8 people, some of them children, unaccounted for after a bizarre incident, a shooting and a house fire, all wrapped onto one very bizarre occurrence. This happened in a suburb of Philadelphia. We're bringing in these pictures for you, but we know very little. But there is something we must tell you, and that is that 2 police officers were also reported shot and wounded. This is all going down in East Lansdowne, west of the city. It is, the city district attorney's office said they don't know at this point if there are more people inside that burning inferno. But 2 police officers were reportedly fired upon when they came to attend to a call that there was an 11-year-old girl apparently who was shot. An 11-year-old girl shot. That's the call. The police arrive, and this is what they see. They held a news conference a short time ago, the officials there, and they said they still don't know how many people are even in that house or how many people were believed to live in that house. They said they can't even get into that house until tomorrow morning when that fire is completely out. According to local news reports, a neighbor said that he heard gunshots before he was ordered out of his own home by police. He's now terribly worried that his dogs are in there, and if his house catches fire because it's next door, his dogs are in danger. At this point, we have absolutely no idea who fired the shots or what motivated the shooting or the fire. I want to bring in Caitlin Becker, NewsNation's national correspondent. Caitlin, I did hear one thing when they were talking in the news conference, and that was that there's 2 officers shot. Other officers are rushing to their aid, and they're getting fired upon as well. So where do we stand in this whole melee?
Well, Ashleigh, from what we understand, when the officers arrived on the scene, shots rang out. And according to the DA, the shooter then ran into this home. And then about 15 minutes later, it went up in flames. The DA believes that the shooter purposefully set fire to this house. Likely, my guess is, to flee, but we have no idea, and neither do the authorities at this point, where that shooter is, if that shooter is alive, if they're in the house, if they fled, and who else may be inside. So really, the house, which, as you said, we can't get into for search and rescue until tomorrow when that blaze has fully been extinguished. Until then, we won't know what we're really dealing with here. Is it a mass shooting? Because we know there was gunfire. Is it a mass murder? Is there no one in the house? Is it arson? Is it an accident?
Well, what do we know about, at least witnesses? Did anybody see anything that they could sort of help and inform the police of what they were dealing with?
Actually, quite a few people were around. This happened kind of middle of the day, about 3:30, 3:45. So take a look right now at what a local crossing guard had to say about what she witnessed when the shots rang out.
Cop came flying around the corner. He got out, and then he's in front of the house talking to 2 people. And then all of a sudden, I heard 6 or 7 gunshots. Cop got down on the ground, I ran and took off.
And Ashleigh, from what we understand, those gunshots certainly hit those 2 officers. They were 2 of them, each of them shot once in an arm, once in a leg. They're being treated at a local hospital. They are expected to survive, but we don't know the status of if anyone is in that house and whether or not they were alive or possibly dead when the flames started. There are definitely more questions than answers with this story at this point.
That's just heartbreaking to hear that there's at least 6, maybe 8 people at this point, including kids, that they can't find, that they're unaccounted for. And then you see this inferno and you wonder, God, please don't let them be in there. Don't let them have succumbed to this kind of awfulness. Caitlin, keep an eye on it for us during the show and just report back when and if you hear some more.
Absolutely.
All right, Caitlin Becker doing that live reporting for us tonight. We will watch that and we'll let you know. And thank God the officers are going to be okay. But, they're shot at and the other officers shot at as they're trying to rescue these officers. This is a terrible, terrible story that's unfolding. Like I said, we'll update you. But I have this other big breaking story as well. I mean, I didn't expect it was going to get this big this fast, but neither of the W's in the WWE stands for wall. Yet a wall of silence sure has kept that place insulated. The thing about walls, though, is that sometimes with the right amount of pressure, at the right amount of time, they can come crashing down, even if they have stood for generations. And it appears that the walls protecting Vince McMahon at the top of the WWE food chain might just be doing that, crumbling all around him. Today, several former insiders, including wrestling superstars, are now speaking out about the WWE's culture in general and sexual assault allegations against McMahon in particular. A former WWE Intercontinental Champion has sent this show an exclusive statement with his thoughts about McMahon, and they are not flattering. He also sent us what he considers proof that the WWE has spent years trying to silence him, and I'm going to share all of that with you in just a moment. First, though, a couple of new developments in that federal criminal investigation into Vince McMahon. All of it for the alleged sex trafficking. There are sources telling the Wall Street Journal that over the past few months, federal investigators have spoken with multiple women accusing McMahon of misconduct. They include Janelle Grant, who is the former WWE employee who filed that bombshell civil suit that prompted McMahon's resignation last week. Feds also questioned another former employee who reportedly said that she was demoted after she broke off an affair with John Laurinaitis. Laurinaitis is the WWE's former head of talent relations. Laurinaitis is also lumped into the lurid accusations that were made against McMahon last week in that lawsuit, as is the entire WWE organization itself. Janelle Grant accuses Laurinaitis and McMahon of grooming her and raping her repeatedly during her employment there. This week, an attorney for Laurinaitis told the media site Vice that, brace yourself, Laurinaitis himself was coerced by McMahon and is, quote, a victim in this case, not a predator. Just let that sit for a minute. And we've also learned new details about McMahon's sudden departure from the organization on January 26th, just one day after Grant filed her lawsuit. Reportedly, it was not his idea. WWE is now part of a company that's called TKO, which also owns the UFC. And TKO is owned by a company called Endeavor. If you've heard of it, you should. It is owned and led by a former famous Hollywood super agent named Ari Emanuel. And the sources tell The Hollywood Reporter that Emanuel was blindsided by the graphic and stomach-turning allegations in Janelle Grant's lawsuit, and that he immediately told McMahon it would be in the best interest of the company if he went away. McMahon once controlled 34% of TKO stock, and that is now down to 10% after a planned sell-off. Ronda Rousey, a former UFC fighter and WWE champion, has said that she does not completely buy that McMahon has really resigned and thinks that he still may be involved behind the scenes. Rousey is just one of the former WWE champions who have recently broken their silence. And I'm just going to tell you this. You might want to get a pad and paper. Here we go. Current WWE superstar Seth Rollins had this to say on CBS Sports Radio. Take a look.
It's awful. It's terrible. I hate it. It's a disgusting situation.
Disgusting situation, he says. Former WWE star Maria Kanellis posted this on her social media site. All the news coming out is horrible, she says. Many of us experienced or heard rumors of different levels of evil for years. Some tried to speak up to build momentum to change the culture in WWE. Many times we've been called bitter or crazy. Others have been paralyzed by fear. I just hope justice is served, and I hope this brings some people peace. I pray for all the victims, the ones that have spoken up, the ones no longer with us, and the ones who suffer in silence. Really powerful, powerful statement. And then there's this from former WWE superstar Mick Foley. He also discussed the lawsuit on his podcast called Foley is Pod. He said, I don't know all the facts, but man, it's really ugly. I hope it doesn't take away from people's amazing memories of all the things that Mr. McMahon created or helped create, including my character and the programs that I was in. He was such a big part of it. I wish he really just stepped aside the first time we just heard a little hint of these allegations. Former WWE Intercontinental Champion Ryback Reeves sent us this statement today exclusively, and let me read from it. Quote, a lot more is going to come out on Vince McMahon and the entire structure of the company from his time there. He will go down as one of the most evil humans to have ever existed. And there is far worse to come out on him and many others still in the company who also knew of much of this activity, of his activity. It's all going to come out if they keep looking. They've hidden everything with non-disclosure agreements. Ryback also sent us these photos of an email that he says he received from the WWE along with this statement. Quote, the WWE tried to get me to hand over all my social media in 2016 when I walked out along with an NDA. I declined, and they've illegally suppressed my socials for nearly 7.5 years, along with pushing fake articles to create hate and discredit myself and my brand. The WWE has not responded to our multiple requests for comment, and this is why I now bring in Dave Meltzer. He is a respected sports journalist covering pro wrestling and MMA. He's also the editor of the Wrestling Observer. Dave, I mean, I couldn't really keep up with the names and the statements and the podcasts and the video, representations and the excoriations of Vince McMahon. And I just wonder if this is indeed the dam breaking.
It's going to slowly break as time goes by. More and more people will feel, if they believe that he's gone, they'll be feeling more and more comfortable to speak out against him, yeah.
Well, I called it DEFCON Weinstein on Friday. And that started with a trickle as well. A couple of women who finally just had the power to say their piece. And suddenly, one by one, same thing happened with Cosby, one by one, over 100, all came forward with their accounts. So while it's okay to hear people upset and speaking out, I think what's really needed is, people who, like Janelle Grant, if they have actual harm that they can document to come out and be public. Do you think that's going to happen?
That's hard to say. I think that the investigators are going to be looking for those people. And we know the people with the NDAs, and we know they're talking to the people with the NDAs. So people who are the most, who had, I guess, the most that for WWE to fear by paying them the NDAs are talking or the feds are attempting to get them to talk. So there's probably going to be a lot more because these allegations have been around for decades, and it's just connecting the stories with the faces, so to speak, at this point.
Well, an NDA, can't protect you from criminal prosecution, and if the feds are involved at the level at which it appears today, with these additional women who have been questioned, have you heard anything on the inside, sort of industry-wide, about what their tactics are, what the feds are doing, who they're talking to, what they're getting, what kind of case they might be mounting?
No, I don't know anything about what they have talked about with the feds or anything like that. No, as far as in the industry, it's pretty secretive. I mean, everyone is curious, but nobody really knows inside as far as the federal investigation goes. Internally, there's all kinds of rumors as well, but nothing substantive has happened as far as anybody else other than Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis.
All right, talk to me about Laurinaitis. John Laurinaitis was named in Janelle Grant's suit. She said that he was often part of the abuse, that they tag-teamed her. I struggle to even say what the allegations were because they're really horrifying. What she says, they're disgusting, just disgusting. The language that allegedly Vince McMahon used to communicate with her, the language that was suggested with John Laurinaitis.
You've seen the text. You've seen the text. So as far as the language goes, a lot of that's right there in written form from him. So that's really, that's pretty damning evidence to me.
And it's important to say these are allegations in a lawsuit that was filed by Janelle Grant. He says he vehemently denies it. He says this is all made up and he's going to have his day in court. He says, we'll wait to see if he has his day in court or if he decides to settle. But talk to me about John Laurinaitis, because I didn't see this coming. I did not see John Laurinaitis' lawyer coming forward to say, oh, no, John's a victim too. John was coerced by McMahon. But doesn't John Laurinaitis know where the bodies are buried? Does this smell like of a full-on flip? Like he's going to flip on Vince McMahon?
100% flip to save himself, yeah. That's what it seems like. That's what it is. One of the things is by flipping on him, one of the things his lawyer basically said is it was a corroboration. Yeah, most of this stuff or much of this stuff happened, which is scary in the case of the rape allegation, because if he claims that, he's going to try to save himself and and saying he was coerced and everything like that. But by just saying that, his lawyer said that basically it's a good lawsuit, except it doesn't paints John as the predator instead of also being the victim. But that's a corroboration that the story's not made up. At least the way it looks to me.
It's wild. Big question for you, and I said DEFCON Weinstein, but WrestleMania 40 is coming up, and it's like it's the end all be all, right? So yeah, I wonder if you think April 6th and 7th, if it's going to stay on the rails. And I ask that also because The Rock's daughter has been getting death threats. I thought it had to do with all of this business. It turns out it's not. It's about The Rock replacing Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. So are the fans more... are they just going to stay focused on the wrestling and the entertainment, or is this going to have an effect? Will it cast a pall on WrestleMania 40?
WrestleMania 40 is going to go on. It's going to be the biggest event as far as people watching in the history of wrestling, no matter what happens. This is not going to change that. And as far as fans, what I could say is on social media, there is a lot more outrage, unfortunately, about the main event at WrestleMania than there is about the Vince McMahon stuff. Now, I've brought that up myself, and I go, isn't that kind of sick that you're, more upset about this than the other thing? And then the kind of reaction is just like, well, we can't control the other thing, but maybe if we complain enough, we can get the WrestleMania main event changed. And the funny part of it is that this is all a WWE storyline to rile up the fans in the first place, so they don't even know that they're being played, when they're getting this upset. So it's just, it's crazy. It's a crazy situation.
Wow. It has me pretty fascinated on both sides, on the entertainment side and then, of course, on the legal side. Dave Meltzer, I told you that you were going to be a regular guest, and that's not going to end. Thank you for doing this tonight.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks.
Appreciate it. All right. And we're going to continue to cover the story because, like I said, feels like the dam's breaking. In the meantime, straight ahead, a woman in the Midwest is accused of being a serial killer. And yes, I said woman. Drugging, stealing, killing, like a ruthless, grim reaper if the accusations are true. And now there's also a pattern of dead bodies in Austin, Texas. Is that a Southern serial killer? How is it that cops decide when it's no longer just a murder here and there, but a twisted animal that's actually stalking our citizens one by one? Up next, the man who pinned 7 cold cases on the Torso killer with some advice on how to turn the tables on a serial killer and stalk them till they're caught. If you just look at the numbers that we've reported in detail on this program, we probably don't have too much to fear when it comes to serial killers because there aren't actually that many of them. One study found that back in 1987, there were a whopping 198 active serial killers lurking around the U.S. That's the most on record. But in 2018, there were just 12. 12 compared to 198. And still, murders happen every day, and the patterns do emerge by design or just by coincidence, and suspects do get charged. Case in point, in Columbus, Ohio, a suspect named Rebecca Auburn is said to be the rarest kind of serial killer, a woman. She is charged with 4 counts of murder, among other things, for allegedly meeting up with men for sex and then killing them with fentanyl so that she can rob them. She was due in court again today, but she opted to waive her right to a speedy trial, and instead her hearing was continued, so stay tuned. And speaking of patterns, in 2022 alone, 11 bodies of young men in their 20s and 30s were pulled out of the waterways around Chicago. More were recovered last year, and you'd better believe that Chicagoans want to know if, in fact, these are connected. The police have not said as much, but elsewhere in Austin, Texas, just yesterday, police fished yet another body out of Lady Bird Lake. Between February and April of last year, 4 bodies, all men under the age of 40, were pulled from that lake. And will police say that they don't suspect foul play? The cyber sleuths have something else to say. They've already given the hypothetical killer a nickname, the Rainy Street Ripper. It's quite something. I don't know why it's not the Ladybird Lake Ripper, but the question is, how do investigators know if they're tracking a killer or if they're tracking a serial killer? Is there really a smiley face killer out there somewhere, killing and dumping young men on their way home from bars and leaving smiley face graffiti at all of the scenes? Because that idea has been bouncing around for almost 30 years. And despite the FBI and dozens of experts doing their level best to shoot it down, it just refuses to die. And my next guest knows a thing or two about all of this. Robert Anzalotti is the retired chief of the detectives for Bergen County Prosecutor's Office in New Jersey. He has closed 7 cold cases related to the so-called torso killer, a man named Richard Cottingham, who terrorized Bergen County from at least 1967 until his arrest in 1980, and he was known for dismembering his victims. Here's Cottingham confessing to the 1969 murder of Irene Blaze from A&E's The Torso Killer Confessions.
Ultimately, he notices that she walks to a bus stop, and she is last seen by witnesses talking to an unknown white male, and he starts pulling on his earlobe.
How about we go get a drink? And she hesitated, and then she says, well, I can go for 1 drink. So I had to walk there? No, we took a cab. I got her to go to the Holiday Inn in Middlebury. That's where I had my car parked. I think we had 2 drinks.
When Cottingham mentions taking Irene Blaze to Little Ferry, a light bulb goes off in my head. In 1967, some 2 years earlier, that's exactly where he met Nancy Vogel and abducted her from.
Robert Anzalotti is live with me now. Robert, thank you for being on. And I'm going to ask you about Richard Cottingham in a moment and what it was like to negotiate with a guy like that. But the first question I have for you is sort of broader. Since you've been through so many of these cases, what is it that triggers the cops to change their thinking from a murder here and there to an absolute pattern where, dear God, we've got a serial predator out there that we've got to stop?
Well, thanks, Ashleigh, for having me on, first of all. But so that question's a tough one. I think it is so specific to what's going on in a general pattern, but it is just that, a pattern, right? The cops are looking for a pattern. It becomes kind of complacent. I was a homicide detective for 20 years. We kind of get used to the idea that a victim ordinarily knows their killer. For the most part, cases are either they may be gang-related, they may be domestic violence related. It's not often stranger abduction-related types of crimes. They're much more rare. And I think, for the most part, homicide detectives don't think that way until we start to see a number of bodies popping up that begin to fit a certain pattern. And those patterns could be a lot of things, right? It could be, hey, is it an age demographic? It is a gender-specific pattern. Is it like we're talking about in Austin, these bodies keep popping up in the same body of water? What does that mean? But I think that's really where, as a homicide detective, you begin to say, is this part of something more?
I mean, yeah, like some places are just convenient, right? Gilgo Beach might have been convenient or may have just all been the Gilgo Beach serial killer. Some lakes are nice and secluded and dark and maybe a good place to dump a body. Let me get you to Richard Cottingham for a moment, because I can't imagine what your job is like. I often imagine what it would be like to be Clarice Starling, but negotiating with a killer like Cottingham, who literally wants to know what's in it for him at all times. First of all, how do you get something out of him? And second of all, how do you learn from him to be better at, the mousetrap that you continue to build?
Yeah, so I will say this. I've interviewed dozens and dozens of killers, and certainly my handful of serial killers besides Cottingham. They're all a little bit unique, a little bit different. But when it comes to serial killers like Cottingham, the common denominator is ego, manipulation, and just really, like you just said, what's in it for me? Why should I help you? At the end of the day, they all have that same thing, that they think they're smarter than the cops. They think they're smarter than the public. They certainly think they're smarter than their victims. So it's a matter of kind of finding, like, how do you get under their skin to get them to believe that they're controlling the conversation?
Oh, that's got to feel like you need a shower afterwards. Honestly, I can't even think through that. But how hard is it? Because I keep thinking about all these, like BTK is sitting there, and I really truly believe he's got plenty more victims that he's not copping to. How hard is it to get someone like that to just cough it up and confess? You're rotting away anyway. Nothing's going to change in your life. How can you get them to confess?
I love that statement, right? Everybody thinks that way. Hey, what do they have to lose? They're doing multiple life sentences. Why don't they just confess? And I give the same answer every time. That is, they are masters of control. Think about the killings that they've done. It's about control. And while they're rotting in prison, they have control of nothing in their life other than what they spit out of their own mouth. So it's not quite that simple as to just be like, well, they have nothing to lose, so let's get them to talk. It's actually the exact opposite. They look at it now, hey, you're engaging me. I'm going to try and control this situation, and I'll decide when I spit out whatever it is I choose to spit out.
I mean, I think I would lose so much patience if I were you, and I would slam the door in their face and say, enjoy your commissary cookies. I'd get so angry and frustrated just thinking about all those poor victims and their families.
Yes, exactly right. There's a bigger picture there.
Absolutely right. Robert Ancelotti, I could talk to you forever. So, in fact, I'm going to call you back and have you on again. Thank you for doing this tonight.
Come back anytime. Thanks so much for having me. And thanks for what you do.
Oh, it's great to have you. Well, right back at you, obviously, having put that guy away. So appreciate it. All right, still to come, folks. The coroner called it the most heinous crime he had ever seen. An autistic woman, neglected, starved, literally melted in death into her couch, surrounded in her own waste. And who was to blame? Allegedly her own parents. The man who charged them with murder joins me next.
His karate lessons might not turn him into a black belt. Hi-ya! And even after band camp, he might not be the greatest musician. But with the 3% annual percentage yield you can earn on a PenFed premium online savings account, your goal of supporting his dreams...
Thanks for everything, Mom and Dad.
...will always be worth it. Apply today at PenFed.org/savings. Federally insured by NCUA. $5 minimum to open account. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed.
PenFed's got great rates for everyone. This Valentine's Day, wish for a romantic dinner. Wish for a little kiss. Wish for 9 hours of I Dream of Jeannie. Your wish is our command. So watch I Wish for an I Dream of Jeannie Valentine's Day Marathon.
Thou art all heart.
February 14th, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern on Antenna TV. Go to antennatv.tv to check your local listings.
Inflation has fallen in recent months, and one reason may be lower gasoline prices, but that may be about to change. According to AAA, the national average price of regular gas has risen nearly a dime a gallon in the last week. A weekend refinery accident could send prices even higher. Instagram is rolling out a new feature that it says will encourage teens to rethink how much time they're spending on the app late at night. The company said the new feature will nudge young users if they have been on the site longer than 10 minutes at night. If you try to stick to a vegan diet, consider this. A new study by the Chartered Trading Standards Institute claims that despite the belief vegan products contain nothing from animals, there is no legally binding definition for the term anywhere in the world. Some vegan products can contain small amounts of egg and dairy. I'm Mark Huffman. Learn more at consumeraffairs.com.
If I would have kept making only the minimum payments on my credit cards, my debt would have taken me 47 years to pay off.
These are real National Debt Relief customers.
I knew I wasn't going to be able to get out of debt by myself.
Credit card, medical, or personal loan debt? National Debt Relief negotiates with your creditors to reduce what you owe.
National Debt Relief got me out of debt.
You could be debt-free in as little as 24 to 48 months. Visit nationaldebtrelief.com to learn more and get started. nationaldebtrelief.com.
Hey everyone, Operation Lifesaver here. Today we're going to find out what delivery drivers know about railroad safety. What do you do if your vehicle gets stuck on the railroad tracks?
Get out of the car?
Correct. Do you take the pizza?
No, then I call my boss.
No. Then you call the number on the blue and white ENS sign.
And tell them I'm stuck on the Crescent ID number.
Exactly. Remember, get out, get away. Find the blue and white sign to save your life. Leave the pizza.
See tracks? Think train. For more information, go to oli.org.
You're listening to Banfield on NewsNation. To find NewsNation on your screen, go to joinnn.com.
Where can the skills you learn with ham radio take you? Amateur radio, often called ham radio, is the place where today's engineers got their start. Ham radio is more popular than ever before. With hands-on training in electronics, engineering, and digital communications, modern hams interface computers and radios in entirely new ways. Ham radio in the 21st century can take you around the world or into a whole new career. Learn more. Go to arrl.org. Join us.
Smokey the Bear's.
Then you know why Smokey tells you when he sees you passing through. Remember, please be careful, it's the least that you can do.
What you desire, don't play with matches, don't play with fire.
After 80 years of learning his wildfire prevention tips, Smokey Bear lives within us all. Learn more at SmokeyBear.com. And remember,
only you can prevent wildfires.
Brought to you by the USDA Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Dear hero, whoever you are, you save lives. I live with sickle cell and the pain and the issues that come along with sickle cell every day. I'm most grateful that people are willing to go out there and take their time, their blood, and give me new life. Because of you, I'm allowed to see my son grow up.
Giving equals living. Give blood. Replenish the supply. Learn more at hhs.gov/giveblood. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
I have to start this next story with a warning, and trust me, I'm not being dramatic here. The coroner who processed the crime scene that I'm about to describe said that he cried and could not eat for a week afterwards. The crime in question involved a victim named Lacey Ellen Fletcher, and up until about age 14, she appeared to live a pretty normal life on the outskirts of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But somewhere around 9th grade, it's believed that her autism got really bad because she effectively disappeared. It's thought because of her autism being so serious that her mother decided to homeschool her. And the last time anybody saw Lacey outside of her house was 2006. So now fast forward, decade and a half later, January 2022. Lacey's mother, Sheila Fletcher, calls 911 and claims that she and her husband, Clay, had just come home from a weekend away, and they found Lacey on the couch, not breathing. What the first responders encountered was a whole other story, like a horror story. The first thing they were hit with when they came into the house was the stench of human waste, and lying there, lifeless, on the living room couch was the emaciated body of Lacey Fletcher, now 36 years old. Lacey had open wounds to the bone, all the way from her feet to her buttocks. She had feces smeared on her face and matted into her hair. Her body was covered in maggots and gnats, and she was literally fused to that sofa that's on your screen right now. We're not going to show you her body, but that was the crime scene right there. It was so bad that the floors under the couch were buckling under the pooling waste. An autopsy showed that Lacey died from a number of causes, and one of them was starvation. She was apparently so hungry that she was actually eating the foam from that sofa. You could see the pieces of it are missing everywhere. I suppose it is not a surprise, then, to hear that her parents were charged with second-degree murder. But they denied everything. They claimed Lacey suffered from debilitating anxiety and that they had tried to feed her. But just this week, they pleaded no contest to a reduced charge of manslaughter. And I'm joined now by Sam D'Aquila, who is the district attorney in the case. DA Aquila, thank you so much for being here. What am I missing? This fact pattern seems absolutely impossible, to have an adult daughter literally dying slowly to the point where she's fused to a couch. What is their defense? What part of this story did I not bring forward?
You brought pretty much all of it forward. The parents were actually charged with second-degree murder. Last week in court, they entered a plea to manslaughter. Both parents did. Both parents are 65 years old, Clay and Sheila Fletcher.
I keep thinking there's got to be something else. There's got to be some other explanation. What parent could live with a child, even an adult child, literally dying in front of them in a circumstance that we're showing on the screen? It just seems utterly impossible. And they seem fairly normal. I mean, this is them walking, with a bunch of church members supporting them.
That's correct. They're prominent members of the community. They live in Slaughter, Louisiana. The husband works at a nuclear power plant in St. Francisville, Louisiana, and the mother was in the court system in Baker, Louisiana. They're members of the First Baptist Church in Zachary, Louisiana. The support that they have was the family members. Not the family members, the community members and church members. They've actually written a lot of letters to the court system advising that they knew the Fletchers since childhood or all their life or through their school years. They were actually, I believe, high school sweethearts. They've been married and resided in the same location for a number of years. There's just no indication of why this crime occurred. The defense attorneys state that they loved Lacey to death. Lacey was 36 years old, like you stated, when she passed. The last time that she has seen a medical provider, we believe, was in 2002. That's over 20 years ago. The maximum sentence for manslaughter, which they pled nolo contendere to, is 40 years. So we're going to ask for the entire 40 years as their sentence.
And that, as I understand, is going to happen on March 20th, the sentencing. When you go to trial, you as a prosecutor would be privy to a lot of discovery and what the defense, might be planning to say. But when there's a plea like this, have you been given any explanations? Have you been given anything? Will you be given anything? Is that all being held until March 20th so that they can plead their case and try to beg the judge to go easy on them?
And basically what the defense that they're going to raise is learned helplessness. It's not a psychiatric disorder, but it's just a condition that you learn when you're dealing with somebody that has a chronic disease, that you just cannot function. We're going to learn a lot more about it when they present their case on the 20th.
I can't even imagine what kind of case you can bring. Just knowing the simple fact that woman, that 36-year-old woman, died that way on that sofa in that condition, being found in that condition, while these two, by their own admission, were away for a weekend. The other question is those people, those church members who supported them and marched with them and wrote letters for them, did any one of them mention a word about Lacey?
No. They said the Fletchers loved their daughter. They said the Fletchers were there for their daughter. Nobody in any of the correspondence that were received made any mention that they have seen Lacey in the past 10 or 15 years. Didn't go to church with them, didn't go on vacation with them. We have no indication that she was out of the house since 2010. As a matter of fact, Sheila and Clay Fletcher brought Lacey to Dr. Hope in 2002. That's the last time he saw her. The parents came back in 2010, talked to Dr. Hope, said Lacey was confined to the house. She didn't want to leave the house. She didn't want to leave the living room. They didn't know what to do with her. He advised them that she needs to be hospitalized. They did not provide any type of medical care or any kind of treatment for her at all. And it's mind-boggling to us why. And we really can't explain why. We don't have to prove motive. We don't have to prove premeditation. We just are just dumbfounded by the fact that this happened in this small community.
Well, you and me both. Mr. Tequila, thank you so much for being on. Can I invite you back after the sentencing, once maybe we learn a little bit more about whatever their story is going to be and whatever this judge decides to do? Can we make a date for the 20th?
Yes, we can. And we really hope that this coverage provides. We really hope this coverage provides attention to the people that are out there, the children, the elderly, and the infirm, who can't speak for themselves. Your community needs to, all our communities need to come together and respond and check on people that are homebound.
Without question. And if anyone out there is doing anything like this, beware. You will be caught at some point. Again, I can't thank you enough. Sam D'Aquila, look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Thank you for this.
All right. Thank you, Ashleigh. Have a good night.
I just want to give a programming note, too, to our viewers here that tomorrow night on our show, the coroner, who was among the first on the scene after that 911 call, is going to join us, and why he calls it the most heinous crime he's ever seen. Coming up next, they thought they could put one over on the police at the scene of a deadly crash. How a pair of twin sisters are now paying the price for pretending to be each other after their SUV obliterated an Amish buggy, killing 2 kids and the horse, and injuring 2 more kids on their way to school. So what's going to happen to the twins behind that story, that lie, that switch? It's all next. A country road in southern Minnesota, 8:30 in the morning. An SUV going way over the speed limit crashes into the back of an Amish horse and buggy. Inside, 4 kids on their way to school. When the police arrived, they found 2 of those kids dead, 2 little girls. You can see them there, aged 7 and 11. Irma Miller is the one on the right, and her little sister Wilma is right back there, peeking over the cup in the back. The other 2 kids who were in the buggy were badly hurt. The horse that was pulling the buggy was killed. The driver of that speeding Toyota 4Runner was 35-year-old Samantha Jo Peterson. She would test positive for both weed and meth. Before police arrived, however, Samantha Jo Peterson's identical twin sister, Sarah, showed up at the scene, and allegedly a plot was born. According to the court documents, the pair swapped clothes at the crash site and lied about who was driving, because who could tell them apart, right? They're twins. Sarah, the sober one, is on tape in a police car telling Samantha, quote, "I think that one of those guys is on to me, but I really don't care." And then she said, "There's no way they would ever know the difference between the 2 of us, so they can't tell." Sarah, again the sober sister, initially told police that she was the one who was behind the wheel, and even provided her blood to test for substances. And there was a pretty good reason why the sober sister was prepared to take the rap, other than the obvious. Because just 6 months earlier, Samantha, the not sober one, was charged with possession and use of meth and marijuana. And she also had 2 separate DUI convictions dating back to 2015. The twins' boss, yes, they worked at the same place, says that he believes Sarah, the sober one, was willing to take the fall because Samantha apparently took care of Sarah's kids when Sarah was in prison some time before. When the police opened Samantha's phone, they found internet searches, and you can't make this stuff up. What happens if you get in an accident with an Amish buggy and kill 2 people? And then another one. If you hit a buggy and kill 2 people, are you going to prison? The answer, by the way, is yes. Allegedly, Samantha Jo Peterson made the investigators' job even easier by just going ahead and admitting the whole switcheroo to her employer. The court papers say she told her Human Resources Department, and I quote, "I effed up. I just killed 2 Amish people. They were kids. I just hit an effing buggy, and I killed 2 people." And when HR asked whether she'd been drinking, she said, quote, "I'm high on meth." Tonight, Samantha Jo Peterson is charged with 21 counts, including criminal, vehicular homicide, driving under the influence, and leaving the scene of an accident. It is not clear whether she is in custody or whether she has an attorney at this point. But 2 innocent Amish sisters are dead, along with the horse that was attached to their buggy, and 2 other kids badly hurt. Samantha Jo Peterson has a summons for a court date, March 15th, and as for that twin sister of hers, she's in trouble too, charged with trying to deceive the police, and we are going to watch this one for the sake of those 2 little girls. Coming up next, Joe Exotic, the Tiger King, is back. During the pandemic, it seemed everybody was obsessed with him and his sentence for plotting to kill Carol Baskin. He is still in prison, but he does have a plan to get out. And of all people, it involves Gypsy Rose. I know, I don't get it either, but I do have the details next. remember Joe Exotic, the Tiger King? Because how could you forget? If you're like me, back in March of 2020, when the Netflix docuseries about him dropped, it was literally all I could think of. It's all anyone could talk about, that's for sure. How he hired hitmen to kill his arch nemesis, Carol Baskin, and how he actually ended up getting sentenced to 21 years in prison for it. Well, Carol Baskin is still alive, and Joe Exotic is still behind bars, but he doesn't want to be, and he's trying to get out. And he's asking, of all people, Gypsy Rose Blanchard for a little help here. And we're indeed talking about that Gypsy Rose Blanchard, the one who served more than 8 years behind bars for conspiring to kill her mother after a childhood filled with abuse and torture. Gypsy was released from prison back in December. And 3 days ago, Gypsy Rose posted this photo to her Instagram with a message to her fans thanking them for their support. And a lot of fans commented on the photo, and lo and behold, guess what we found? We found that Joe Exotic actually commented as well from his official Instagram account. And the comment reads, "Help free Joe Exotic." It's pretty simple. Just hashtag free Joe Exotic. He's always maintained that he was innocent, right? And he regularly reaches out to celebrities. He wants help with his case. In the past, he's actually reached out to the NFL quarterback, Joe Burrow. He has reached out to Kim Kardashian because she helps release, people who are wrongly accused. And now he's reaching out to Gypsy Rose. She did not respond publicly, though, to Joe Exotic's request. So it's really it's unclear if she's considering helping him. It's really unclear what she could do for him. But his comment on Gypsy Rose's post did get him more than 2,100 likes. We'll continue to follow the story. We'll let you know if anything happens. In the meantime, that is it for me. I am done. My friend Cuomo, though, he's not. He's up next. Stay tuned.
Hey, I'm Chris Cuomo. How you doing? Here's a thought. Maybe it's not simply the economy that's going to decide this election, but safety. And economic safety is part of that. But no domestic issue checks the boxes that the southern border does. Today, we passed the 1 million mark of migrant encounters at the southern border since October. Puts us way ahead of even last year's unprecedented pace. But is the GOP